Hello? Mic check, mic check. Yep. You good? Anyways, it took me a little minute to get the stream set up. My bad, chat. I'll stream, I know.
Bruh.
Alright, I bet. Alright, chat. This is part 2 of the war in America. Got it. Alright. You guys hit that like button. Get it.
The good news is that now with Xi Jinping, the Chinese Communist Party is no longer hiding in plain sight.
同时，中国人民也绝不允许任何外来势力欺负、压迫、奴役我们。谁妄想这样干，必将在14多亿中国人民用血肉铸成的钢铁长城面前碰得头破血流。当今世界正经历100年未有之大变局，突如其来的新冠肺炎疫情对全世界是一次严峻考验。
Great changes unseen in a century, a slogan that Xi Jinping first coined in 2017, became a political buzzword in the CCP, especially in 2020. For the communist regime, the timing of how the global pandemic began wouldn't have been more perfect.
Yeah, that's
It
true.
was a devastating blow to the entire world. We've all witnessed how the CCP turned the initial cover-up of the virus in its favor, a chance to weaken the free world that had always prevailed, and to set off a World War III to reset the world order.
Yep.
On July 1st, 2021, when the CCP celebrated the 100 years of its founding, the great rejuvenation of the Chinese nation was mentioned 21 times.
Wow.
There was no mention of who the foreign enemy is.
I'll stream, I didn't mean
It's
to do
no
that.
longer a secret.
Sorry guys, it's been a
Party's
minute.
anniversaries
I'm a bit rusty.
are
I
usually
gotta
covered
get the
with
stream
release
game
of
on, you know, feel me?
jingoistic war epics.
My bad, chat.
This time, the party chose to focus on the only war that Chinese troops fought head-to-head with American soldiers, the Korean War.
我们将要面对的是世界上装备最好的美国军队，战斗会非常艰苦，但我们要争取胜利。
In it, well-equipped but overly confident U.S. troops were portrayed as aggressors who suffered defeat by heroic Chinese Communist Party soldiers who survived on raw potatoes. In the post-pandemic age, the CCP's plot against the United States has become an open book.
美国不代表国际舆论。我现在讲一句，你们没有资格在中国的面前说你们从实力的地位出发同中国谈话。
Yet for those of us living in America, there's more to the story than we were capable of seeing before.
China's foreign ministry has been accusing the U.S. of increasing tensions with Russia and hyping up the possibility of war.
What is causing the fundamental division between the US and China? Why have party leaders been so consistent in carrying out this century-old agenda? Why advocate for America's demise?
Remember, the United States has been the economic engine for the world economy for the past 70 years. So they want to take that over and to control that for the benefit of the Communist Party.
America is the only force on the planet that can bring them down.
Wow.
They know that if they're going to be victorious, they have to destroy the shining example of liberty on this planet. The only country that can confront them spiritually, philosophically, economically, militarily. The only opposition they really have.
They often refer to warring states and the tactics of the warring states period. And one of those tactics was a kind of win or lose, I win, you lose, zero-sum game, only one country got to lead the world. And that country had to destroy the others or set them against each other or undermine them, steal their technology. There are a variety of techniques that were used.
One thing has never changed about the Chinese Communist Party. From Mao to Xi Jinping, there's not a single one who didn't stress that he is a member of the Communist Party. What is a Communist Party? The Communist Party is a political force that wants to overthrow the existing order of the world, to take over the world, to control the world. Therefore, as long as it is a Communist Party, no matter how many leaders it changes, it will not change its nature.
Fundamentally, there's a problem with communist ideology is that it views everything else as a rival. There is a xenophobia about global dominance, and if there's going to
One
be
guy
global
trips.
dominance,
He stabs his brother in the back.
power.
So United States should never dream of being a so-called friendly relationship. There's no way to reach that, because in front of you, in front of the United States, is a tiger. He wants to eat you.
Like myself, Americans are witnessing how an old friend of nearly 50 years tore off its mask and finally revealed the face of a cold-blooded killer. We cannot help but ask, what did the US government get wrong about the Chinese Communist Party? How did US policy fail? What price must we pay for this failure? And how exactly did the CCP do it? How did they deceive the sky?
One of the reasons that I understood what the Chinese Communist Party was doing was because the way that the B-2 goes to war is very similar. The B-2 is not invisible. In fact, it can be seen by radar. But it's very difficult to see when there's other things that are out there. And so, in many ways, it's deceptive. The Chinese Communist Party's method of warfare is right there in plain sight. In fact, many times they'll tell you exactly what they're doing. But often we're distracted and deceived.
Yeah, sure.
The deception of the CCP is monumental. I mean, not that I think I'm the greatest person, but I have a PhD in American history, I've taught history, I've taught the relationship diplomatically between the CCP and the United States. I lead perhaps the largest think tank in the world, right of center. And I was deceived. So
yeah, me too,
I say
chat.
that for
we all been deceived.
To understand, it's okay for you to admit that you were deceived by this, because it comes from what I believe is the inherent goodness of Americans to give every people on earth, regardless.
Doesn't the Bible that the devil deceives the whole world?
The benefit of the doubt. And what I'm saying is that deception has been laid bare.
Al Biden.
Over the past 200 years, America has been the beacon of freedom. It lights the way for those seeking human rights and freedom of faith. But we were kept in the dark, while this beacon was being severely eroded and sabotaged. And for half a century, America was looking the other way. Why are Americans completely unaware of the CCP's plot after more than 50 years? What are the timings chosen by the CCP to implement the different stages of its plan? If we want to truly confront the CCP threat, we have to go beneath its overt efforts and see its true colors.
Yo, what's up, Zach?
Sort of a binary
What's up, bro?
strategy toward the United States. On one hand,
nice
it
to see you here, bro.
has a very stable continuity based upon its ideology, based upon the institutional incompatibility of the two countries. So that's very clear to the Chinese core.
You want to learn about the CCP and the communists? Stick around,
They
bro.
always view the United States as the ultimate rival, as the source of the biggest threat to the Chinese regime. That's continuity. There's also changes. There's also variations, and that comes to mostly to the point of timing. So at what point China should adopt an offensive position? At what point China could conduct a strategic withdrawal or retreat?
CCP
That
is the
based
Communist
upon
China Party.
The specific timing
Or
and
Communist
specific
Chinese
circumstances
Party,
of the
CCP.
international situation.
It's their government. Chinese government.
To achieve their 100-year goal of defeating America, the CCP has developed a master plan. A plan highly deceptive and complex. They call it Taoguang Yanghui.
In the last several decades, the overall approach was what we call the Taoguang Yanghui, which basically is hide our strength and bide our time. Let's just develop, get stronger, and then timing is not good for us to have a showdown with the United States.
Their whole philosophy
That's a
is
crazy
based
tactic,
on
man.
lying. When they tell you they are weak, that's when you watch out.
Yep. Right now they have COVID. They're doing lockdowns over there in
phrase,
China too
hiding
right
your
now.
strength and biding your time is often attributed to former CCP leader Deng Xiaoping. But in fact, its origin traces back to Mao Zedong.
Why is there COVID in China but nowhere else?
Though
I can't even say that word. I gotta say Coco.
anti-West on the surface,
Oops.
Mao was carefully laying the groundwork for his plan, hiding his strength and biding his time.
We have been here a week.
1972.
This was the week
Nixon.
that changed the world.
As we look back over this week, we think of the boundless hospitality that has been extended to all of us by our Chinese friends. With Chairman Mao, with the Prime Minister, and with others with whom we have met, our talks have been characterized by frankness, by honesty, by determination, and above all, by mutual respect.
Huh? No. The Communist Party is not our friend. They have never been our friend.
I think they started out very unfriendly in 1949, and they became much friendlier after 1972. We thought if we are nice to the Chinese Communist Party and nice to the Chinese people, they will regard us as a friend, and we can all be friends in this wonderful multinational universe we're creating.
But let me point out to you that Deng Xiaoping and I were not naive or ignorant at that time. So we anticipated that in the future there would be many differences between our two countries. But we also realized, I think accurately, that the things that bind us together for peace and progress are much more important than the things that divide us one from another.
But do we really know the hidden truth behind the CCP's strategy? What are the specific policies and scams?
两国之间的合作和友好。
19日下午5时30分，中英联合声明在人民大会堂正式签字。
In 1997, when the CCP took Hong Kong from Britain, it promised to keep the city's open free market system, allowing them a high degree of autonomy. The Communist Party called this policy formula one country, two systems. For US politicians, Beijing seemed open to embracing democratic values in its proclaimed territory. That's even more so in Taiwan. When Henry Kissinger met Mao at his residence in Beijing in the 70s, Mao made these claims about Taiwan. It's better to have Taiwan under the care of the United States now. I say that we can do without Taiwan for the time being, and let it come after 100 years. This was one of the most deceptive promises ever made.
We are very concerned by the PRC's provocative military activity near Taiwan.
李嘉诚先生问起中国政府对香港政策的连续性，邓小平说：“
不会变，从不能变。啊，这个好。这个不是说短期不变，是长期不变。这个道理我过去讲了多少次？对，就算说50年不变了，50年之后更没变的道理。”
There must be a peaceful resolution that respects the rights of the people of Hong Kong, as outlined in the 1984 Sino-British Joint Declaration.
彭斯副总统应该去补一补历史课，拿中英联合声明这份过时无效的文件干涉香港事务与中国内政，不仅让自己沦为国际笑柄，也令美国国家形象蒙羞。
2019, the world watched in shock the death of Hong Kong's freedom.
I don't remember this. I never heard about this.
I would describe now as the collapse of one country, two system.
This is the end of Hong Kong. This is the end of one country, two system. Make no mistake about it.
Whoa.
By now, it would be foolish to think Communist China could follow the same playbook and deceive the people of Taiwan.
Wow.
However, the free world failed to see through another game the CCP has long played: reform and opening up.
What American corporate, financial, and political elites have found out is that they've been duped. For 30 years, they've been duped.
Yeah, we all been duped.
Bruh.
In 1978, the CCP launched economic reforms. Then after 1997, financial and technical aid from the United States and Europe flooded into China. The Chinese regime became an unofficial ally of America. In 2001, with its full support of the Clinton administration, China officially joined the World Trade Organization.
The Ministerial Conference so agrees.
The West opened its doors to the CCP, and Communist China rose from it, becoming the world's largest manufacturing powerhouse.
Wow.
We allowed them to ascend to the WTO in 2001, a little early. We allowed the yuan to be part of the IMF's SDR way too early, but they didn't live up to any of the fundamental listing requirements.
When the Clinton administration agreed to let China into the World Trade Organization, which surrendered the most favored nation clause that we had been using, there were people who said this is going to be a disaster because you have let China in under modified rules. In other words, it doesn't have to behave by the same rules as the other members of the World Trade Organization. And the Clinton administration said, oh, don't worry about it. This is, and this is an exact quote, this will be a poison pill for China. And the exact opposite happened. Instead of ending the trade imbalance became much worse, which it continues to be today.
Wow.
In the 2 decades after joining the World Trade Organization, Communist China ushered in a golden age of economic boom.
I don't understand how people don't know what this stuff is. They don't know what any of this is about.
Crumbled.
You live in a freaking box.
Where you're doing business around the globe, the factory floor is in China.
The fact is that we have been bleeding manufacturing jobs in the whole
Everything's
country.
made in
Went from
China. Look at
almost
the back of
20
your
million
shirt.
jobs
Look at the tag.
in 2000 to 12.3 million today.
How did it happen? What traps
How were you
did
just
we fall
realizing
into
this?
when dealing with the CCP? And what false hopes were we given?
The CCP chose to privatize its companies and to join the WTO, but there's a reason behind it, and that is nearly all state-owned firms were collapsing, and they were dragging down the banks with them. The CCP had no other choice but to turn all state-owned firms into private companies, and then give the ownership of these companies to the officials.
Oh.
A set of data we uncovered.
That's so devastating
revealed
to
what
the entire
CCP
American
had
economy.
tried hard to keep from U.S. political elites. These statistics came from an article titled "Saving State-Owned Banks." In July 1997, China's 4 major state-owned banks were in deep crisis. Bank losses became an open secret. At the end of 1999, the 4 major state-owned banks had a total of about 3.2 trillion yuan of non-performing loans. The CCP's public ownership of enterprises was a total failure, with the banking system on the verge of collapse. And
This is in 1971 too. It's happening again right now in America.
Lost their jobs.
But
In fear of
where's China's
losing
economy
power,
at?
The Communist Party once again rewrote its history by covering up the failure of the socialist economic system. The CCP branded itself as an open-minded regime, willing to abide by the rules of the global market, and eventually cheated its way into the US and Western market.
At this time, the U.S. thinks, look how great the Chinese Communist Party is. They have already privatized their economic sector. They have already achieved a market economy. So we can let them join the WTO.
This is really a socialist system masquerading as a capitalist system. And the reason for that is that all of the Chinese companies that pretend to be independent or semi-private are in fact controlled by the Communist Party of China.
You know, so for the last 20 or 30 years, the communist strategy since Deng Xiaoping is to be friendly to America, to invite in American investment, to build up the economy. Let's
That's
make
crazy.
money together.
That ain't working too well, is it?
Americans, not understanding Marxism, not understanding communism, believed that because China was going back to business, that China was inviting foreign investment, they must be abandoning their communist goals.
Or not.
The vast majority of people in the West who study the Chinese economy and Chinese politics have made the same mistake. They believe that the CCP will embrace democracy when it embraces the market economy. We all know that from Deng Xiaoping's Tiananmen crackdown to Jiang Zemin's crackdown on Falun Gong to Xi Jinping's suppression of Hong Kong today, and how he deprives freedom of speech and freedom of the press, you can see that the CCP's hostility to freedom and democracy has always been consistent.
Hey, hold on, chat.
I read my father.
I need to get that on clip.
Americans, not understanding Marxism, not understanding communism, believed that because China was going back to business, that China was inviting foreign investment, they must be abandoning their communist goals.
Wrong. The vast majority of people in the West who study the Chinese economy and Chinese politics have made the same mistake. They believe that the CCP will embrace democracy when it embraces the market economy. We all know that from Deng Xiaoping's Tiananmen crackdown to Jiang Zemin's crackdown on Falun Gong to Xi Jinping's suppression of Hong Kong today, and how he deprives freedom of speech and freedom of the press, you can see that the CCP's hostility to freedom and democracy has always been consistent.
Praise God you're not in China, chat.
Report after Deng Xiaoping visited the U.S. Deng Xiaoping made it very clear.
Wow.
The reason we
but what's the CCP, right?
Open our market to the U.S. Just we
Lots.
want their money. We want to be a strong country. And then to finally
Bunch of
realize
bots.
our goal. And the east wind will eventually blow off the west wind.
The CCP's secret weapon, capitalist money, is the lifeblood of the communist regime. The CCP gave the world an illusion that it was on its way to capitalism, that it was just following an alternative path to Western capitalism. But in reality, the CCP's market economy is just a means. The end is to save the Communist Party and communism. It has nothing to do with capitalism, much less democracy. The longer we allow the CCP to stay on this track, the greater the threat to the United States. The CCP has the best bait for the world: China's 1.4 billion population and its huge market. For foreign businesses, it was an offer they couldn't refuse. Give us your technology, and we allow you into the playground. But what these foreign companies did not expect: in order to operate in China, these companies were required to form joint ventures with local companies and were forced to share their sensitive private technology. Forced technology transfer helped the communist regime build up its own brands.
That's really smart on Chinese
these
part.
brands started to capture and monopolize the domestic market.
Wow.
Next, with the price advantages and state subsidies, the Chinese brands
Labor.
flooded into the international
They can pay them
market,
30 cents a day.
directly challenging and squeezing out established international manufacturers.
I mean, what they're using right now is basically they're inviting foreign companies in so they can take their money, take their technology, and get rid of them when they at the first opportunity, which is what I think is happening to Tesla right now. It's been very difficult for American businesses. They have been put under onerous restrictions when they operate in China. Oftentimes, they are required to turn over valuable proprietary information as a requirement for doing business in China. They're also restricted from removing money from China, from taking capital out of China.
Put a 1 in the chat if you already knew that.
In the past 20 years, America's painstaking effort to help China enter the world stage,
Beautiful history we wrote together.
to promote democracy and the rule of law inside the country, have all been for naught. But the Chinese regime has swallowed up all the benefits.
U.S. public and private equity investments in Chinese and Hong Kong domiciled companies totaled by our estimates at Commerce $2.3 trillion in market value of holdings at the end of 2020.
In December 2001, when China officially joined the World Trade Organization, its GDP was $1.34 trillion, accounting for 4% of the world's GDP.
Jeez.
20 years later, in 2021, China's GDP was $17.7 trillion,
wow,
accounting for 18% of the world's GDP. These figures tell the story of how China's national power came to be.
It was all a scam.
Yep.
It was all a lie.
Everything's been a
It
scam,
was all
chat.
designed
Wake up.
To get massive American money, to weaken American anti-communist resolve, and to build the Chinese military and Chinese power to the point that they could challenge America.
This has been a great deception on the part of the Chinese Communist Party. And that basically China right now has exploited American openness, American friendship, and is ultimately working to bring about the defeat and ultimate destruction of the United States.
There's been many movies where characters seen killing an animal, hunting for food. And when they get to the animal, they gently caress the animal and they say, "Thank you for giving your life so that I can survive." So we are giving of our life's blood so that the Chinese Communist Party can survive and thrive.
Throughout its 100-year history, this is how the CCP has survived every existential crisis. To quickly alter its face and to lure the world into one false hope after another. Thanks to Western investment, the Chinese regime is now much stronger than it once was. But instead of pushing for political reforms as it promised, the CCP is using this strength to bite the hand that once fed it.
Bruh.
It has begun to unveil the other side of its master plan against the United States.
Wow.
To infiltrate, divide, and subvert American society.
Infiltrate, divide.
So the biggest
We're more
problem
divided than we ever been, chat.
that
Wake
we
up.
have had so far in dealing with China is the fact that China is fully integrated with the Western free market system. So they could take advantage of the open society, and that, to me, is the biggest danger.
This involves every man, woman, and child, and not the military. It is not targeted at the military. It's targeted at families. So we have to become comfortable.
Infiltrate,
How about chat?
divide, and subvert American society. The CCP is using this strength to bite the hand that once fed it. It has begun to unveil the other side of its master plan against the United States. To infiltrate, divide, and subvert American society.
So the biggest problem that we have had so far in dealing with China is the fact that China is fully integrated with the Western free market system. So they could take advantage of the open society, and that, to me, is the biggest danger.
This involves every man, woman, and child, and not the military. It is not targeted at the military. It's targeted at families. So we have to become comfortable with the term warfare under our own roofs in our companies, under our own roofs in our homes. We have to all understand we are at war.
Yep, big tech.
If you thought the Cold War was bad, just put 1,000x on the Cold War. Now you have unrestricted hybrid warfare.
Yep.
Huh?
This is a difficult story. Being stationed in China as a diplomat, as somebody that works for their government, and recognizing that the Chinese Communist Party monitors everything that you do. There are cameras and microphones throughout your living spaces. This was especially traumatic for my wife, who struggled with the fact that everything that she did, every second of every day, she was followed in that apartment that we lived in. And to this day, she suffers from a sort of PTSD that comes from having lived under a microscope. You know, she would go into a closet and cry, shut off the lights and cry in the dark.
Oh, imagine that.
She knew that she couldn't get away from it.
Can't even cry in your own house.
We must stop the Chinese Communist Party's power grab at all costs, or prepare to live in a world where you can be arrested for watching this documentary.
Americans have never confronted an adversary that has engaged in total war to the extent that the CCP has.
This is all-out war. Remember, it's we must live. We, the CCP, must live, and you must die, so you'll never be able to compete again.
The Communist Party of China sees this as a battle of the titans, and either the American system's going to win or the Communist Party of China system is going to win.
The American reality of confronting the CCP is the final war, because the CCP is the greatest threat in human history to freedom.
We could wake up some
is going to win or the Communist Party of China system is going to win.
The American reality of confronting the CCP is the final war, because the CCP is the greatest threat in human history to freedom.
We could wake up some morning and realize this is history's last war.
Most Americans are not aware that we're at war with the Chinese Communist regime. They also don't realize that if the CCP won this final war, our sacred, unalienable rights and all we hold dear will vanish.
Wow.
But where exactly is the main battlefield of this war?
The emphasis I have to make is it's in every living room in the United States and the free world. It's in every classroom. It's in every university. It's an attack on your values. It's an attack on everything.
Yep, facts.
It's not fought with bombs or bullets or nuclear submarines or stealth fighters. It's fought in our homes, in our schools, in our state houses, in our Congress.
Well, China has
Wake the
this
piss
doctrine
up,
of
chat!
unrestricted
Wake up!
warfare, which means they can do anything they want, which means they will use every tool at their disposal. And they are overwhelming the United States. They're overwhelming our government, the FBI, local governments, institutions, businesses, and they're using every point of contact to subvert us.
Unrestricted means that the Chinese Communist Party follows no rules.
And much like the French, prior to World War II, they built this great wall to keep the Germans out, called the Maginot Line. And the French generals were so sure that this Maginot Line was going to protect them from a German invasion. And in fact, what did the Germans do? They used airplanes and tanks and went right around the Maginot Line, and France collapsed very quickly. So in essence, what I recognized was I was part of an establishment that in many ways represented the modern Maginot Line. And in fact, the vaunted US military had been outflanked, and the Chinese Communist Party, using the tools of Silicon Valley, the tools of individual influence and data collection, and business, economics, financial incentives, were eroding the principles that that vaunted establishment was meant to protect.
That's what Xi Jinping's 勿忘初心 really means.
Through our interviews, the amount and scale of the CCP's infiltration into American society unfolded before us. It far exceeds what a single film can contain. We can only pick a few of the real stories, but they're enough to show how much the CCP has already succeeded in taking over American politics, the economy, and the media.
A lot of you are going to say this is false too. It's right in front of your face, and you still won't listen. You still won't listen up. You still won't believe.
In the United States, they have networks of agents who are directed to influence the media, to influence the government, to influence the business community, to influence the entertainment industry. They've been highly successful at this.
Economically, the Communist Party of China is buying up American companies. It is a huge influence in Hollywood. It's got a lot of...
Who are directed to influence the media, to influence the government, to influence the business community, to influence the entertainment industry. They've been highly successful at this.
Economically, the Communist Party of China is buying up American companies. It is a huge influence in Hollywood. It's got a lot of influence in various newspapers and digital media in the country.
Wow.
It's very much allied with big tech.
Yo, let me know if you already knew that.
Communist Party of China.
Let me know if you already knew that.
Actively censoring people
'Cause I never have.
who want to expose the Communist Party of China's crimes. And it's also buying up and influencing politicians.
While I was working at the Pentagon, we began to engage some of the think tanks in Washington, D.C. to find out if any of them were willing to do a study to understand how the corporate America was being influenced by the Chinese Communist Party. We talked to a number of the think tanks and finally had one that was willing to do a study. This was probably the top think tank in Washington, D.C. On the eve of them basically beginning the study, the head of the think tank called the donors and said, I've reconsidered, this is not for us, and we're no longer going to undertake the study.
Wow.
And you start to look at the donors and the board members, you realize that a lot of these donors and board members, and in particular a lot of the scholars that are working in the think tanks, in some way or other benefit from their relationship with China. So what I realized when I was at the White House was this was happening not just with regard to this major think tank, but law firms all across the country, lobbying firms, PR firms, communication firms, all of these firms that are in many ways used by the Chinese Communist Party to influence our political process, and in turn, that affects our national security.
The last to enter, escorted by members of the Joint Inaugural Committee, was Bill Clinton.
They had figured Clinton as a comer when he was governor of Arkansas. So there was a Chinese restaurant across the street from the Arkansas state capitol. Clinton, like many other people, likes his Chinese food, and he gets to be friends with this guy. And then when he gets to the White House, this guy comes with him and has a position of significant influence. They're good at this. They were setting these situations up in many state capitals. The Clinton administration was rife with influence from China.
Wow.
I can remember as a reporter going to the Pentagon for a background briefing on the People's Liberation Army. At the end of one of these briefings, a colonel came in and said, the general would like to see you. And the general was the head of the DIA, the Defense Intelligence Agency. And he told me that China was not a threat. I was shocked because I could understand a political appointee or even a civilian intelligence official telling me that, but for the top military intelligence official to tell me that a nuclear-armed communist dictatorship in Beijing was not a threat to the United States really told me that China had been so successful in influencing the U.S. government that it had reached the highest levels of the U.S. military intelligence community.
The NBA faces a major backlash this morning.
The fact that the Chinese government can force the general manager of the Houston Rockets to walk back comment is actually frightening to me.
Chinese government asked the league to fire Houston Rockets general manager Daryl Morey after he posted a pro-Hong Kong tweet.
You have companies like Disney.
Disney is facing backlash for its live-action remake of Mulan.
Mulan's end credits thanking parts of the Chinese government that have been accused of human rights violations.
You have companies who walk back comments when the Chinese Communist government challenges them and threatens them because of comments they've made.
The Gap apologized for selling T-shirts emblazoned with a map of China, not including Taiwan, South Tibet, or the South China Sea.
90% of what you hear in the news today is all driven by Chinese communist leadership. If you know how to connect the dots, is the Chinese Communist Party is behind it to completely destroy the free world, democracy, and with intent to fully take it over.
One of the primary organizations is called the China United States Exchange Foundation. This is chaired and founded by one of the individuals who really oversees this United Front effort. And this group has made overtures to journalists, former congressmen, textbook review commissions, think tankers, and even academics and professors to really push a pro-Beijing line. Often they offer them trips to China in exchange for either favorable coverage or disseminating positive messages about the Chinese government.
Wow.
Virtually every mainstream media outlet, all the way from CNN, Washington Post, the New York Times, down to even local news outlets, all expenses paid by the Chinese government.
They've been taking out full pages in the Wall Street Journal, in the New York Times, and the Washington Post. And these look like regular news items, but they're in fact sourced for Xinhua, the Chinese news agency. And so they give the Chinese point of view.
Wow. Bought and sold, chat. Bought and sold. Exactly what that is.
What the CCP is targeting are the most powerful voices in our society, be it the media or the government. Once tainted by the party, these institutions can then amplify the Chinese narrative and deliver it to American households. What is the CCP good at? Beat the Americans at their own game. Having watched us and studied us for decades, the party knows exactly where the pressure points are and who to target. Once these key figures are bribed or threatened, the CCP's real atrocities will stay in the dark. Compromise and silence bought us temporary gain, but it comes at a cost. The future of our children.
The China-United States Exchange Foundation has even extended its reach into textbooks that are used at the kindergarten level. For over a decade now, they've carried out what's called the Tibet Factual Review, which is an effort to influence and really dictate in its entirety the way that the issue of Tibet is covered in textbooks that are used in American classrooms.
Wow.
Time magazine, which is one of these mainstream media outlets that also participated in these China-United States Exchange Foundation trips, years after sending journalists on these trips, they actually partnered with Huawei, which is of course a national security threat as regarded by the United States, to launch a publication for children, specifically for use in classrooms. And the magazine was called Time for Kids.
I am one of the few people on Wall Street that tries to understand the manner in which they're operating and also the incentives of all the players, and then the proclivities of everyone that wants to invest in and make a profit from China, and then the very few that actually put morality in front of dollar signs.
That's crazy, bro. Bought and sold, chat. Every single one of them bought and sold.
Just live with some genocide and live with some atrocities that are going on in Xinjiang and the forced organ harvesting of the Falun Gong, the Tibetans and the Mongolians and the ethnic Christians. And Wall Street just doesn't care about that, right? They care about the next profit dollars.
It's all about money. I don't think anyone cares about.
These stories are just the tip of the iceberg.
They don't care if they sell you out, chat.
The Communist Party's ubiquitous spy network. The astronomical losses to its reckless intellectual property theft. The deadly drug fentanyl imported through the Mexican border. The devastating blow to American manufacturing. The CCP devouring American land. The censorship of Hollywood, and so on. All of these are pushing our country, our families, and our children toward the abyss.
The Chinese government, under the 1,000 Talents program, attempts to recruit very smartly brilliant American scientists working on programs that benefit them. Now, in the case of the Harvard Dean of Biology right now is under review by the FBI and the Department of Justice for actually running one such black laboratory in China.
During the recent administration, the White House produced a report showing that under conciliatory policies towards Beijing, the United States lost between 250 and 600 billion annually in technology that was stolen by the Chinese. No nation which relies on its technological base for so much of its economy can survive under that kind of loss.
95% of the fentanyl that comes in to the U.S. comes from China through Mexico.
Now, where they have been
150 and 600 billion annually in technology that was stolen by the Chinese. No nation which relies on its technological base for so much of its economy can survive under that kind of loss.
95% of the fentanyl that comes in to the U.S. comes from China through Mexico.
Now, where they have been successful is in Hollywood. I have a friend who is so much an expert on Chinese films that the Chinese themselves ask him to come and talk to them about Chinese films. And he says unequivocally that Hollywood will not make a film that does not have the Chinese censors in mind.
I didn't know that. Wow.
The secret of the CCP's unrestricted warfare is to first corrupt people's morality, then use the corrupted people to destroy America step by step. How many people have become tools in the CCP's war? The answer will eventually surface.
Yeah. It'll surface before it's too late, too, chat.
What will the consequences be if we lose this ultimate battle with the Chinese Communist regime?
China will control the United States of America. We are going to have this worry about our very civilization being ruined.
We face the prospect of becoming a U.S. system with Chinese characteristics in the not too distant future.
And a new generation of Americans will be trained to obey the CCP instead of defending our freedoms that were obtained at such great cost.
Wow.
If you want to see how your children are going to be treated in 20 years, just look at how the genocide is going on right now with the Uyghurs, the genocide and the live human organ transplants with the Falun Gong and with the Tibetans.
The totalitarian rule of the Chinese Communist regime has always been accompanied by the use of crisis.
All because you don't wear a mask.
The development of the so-called China model is in fact a political monstrosity unprecedented in human history. Facial recognition technology cameras, the internet,
Mark of
and
the Beast.
artificial intelligence are used to create a ubiquitous surveillance network. There are currently more than 1 billion surveillance cameras installed around the world, and more than half of these are in China.
Jeez.
What would our lives be like if the Chinese Communist model took control of America?
They aim to create the ultimate totalitarian state, a digital totalitarian state, where everything is
digital
run
currency,
by computer, where everybody has social credit scores, where everybody is tracked from cradle to grave, where your life is never your own. Everything you do is dictated by the party. The ultimate totalitarian state. And this should horrify everybody.
When you have the social credit system being put together, the Great Firewall, 600
like the video chat,
surveillance cameras,
the likes up,
and we're just seeing China
more people need to see
go
this.
back to the worst excesses of the totalitarian period.
It controls how people get their information, how people cross the road, how people buy things, and what people say. Every single word.
Your freedom's getting taken away
How people
as I speak.
move around. Every aspect of the Chinese ordinary citizen is subject to a very rigid surveillance and control.
Take over your freedom to be completely controlled by surveillance, by technology, by punishment.
To this day, there are still many governments who are buddies with the CCP, falling for their lies and money traps, being in danger without realizing it. But what is the nature of the Chinese Communist regime?
The nature of the Chinese Communist Party in terms of its internal workings is one that's even worse than the Soviet Union and its Communist Party. That is to say, it's even less transparent.
That's why they want us to hate Russia.
The thing that I think is the
don't worry about China, right? China's not a problem.
It is zealously focused.
Only Russia.
On every policy
it's
inside
false.
China and outside China being focused on China being the hegemon.
I would describe the nature of the Communist Party of China as basically a mafia-type system.
It's like a political mafia. It is going to corrupt everything it touches. It's going to destroy everything it can. It is going to take over everything it can. It is the most evil institution that has ever existed on this planet.
That's a big statement right there.
Key fact.
That's a
that we have to
big
keep
statement.
Always in the back of our minds. We can never forget. And that is, Chinese Communist Party has already killed 70 million, at least 70 million of its own citizens.
We're talking about atrocities,
With the cocoa.
crimes against humanity, genocide. We're talking about the worst behavior of human history.
Yep.
The whole system is based on suppression and cruelty and tyranny. So the communists won't say, we're coming to overthrow and destroy your family. We're coming to overthrow your government. We're coming to destroy your religion. They will say, we're coming to
They ban Bibles.
give you more wealth. We're coming to help equality.
Can't
We're
even talk
coming
about
to
Jesus in
end
China.
oppression. Their whole philosophy is based on lying.
Yep.
And the Communist Party of China is a cancer on this planet. It's a leech. It's drawing resources and nutrients from all over the world to feed its megalomania, to feed its growth.
Wow.
So we have to cut off the nutrients because the Communist Party of China is parasitic. It cannot survive on its own. It's leeching off the Chinese people, and now it wants to parasitize the whole planet. So we have to stop that happening.
The CCP is not a party like a Democrat or Republican. It's a cult.
Cult.
So the cult has the believing from the beginning.
CCP isn't a political party. It's a cult.
It's total disassembly.
The Chinese Communist Party has hijacked the Chinese nationalism to pretend to represent the interests of the people. While in fact, the Chinese Communist Party is the
He's a
enemy
former
of the
CCP.
The Chinese Communist
Wow.
Party is not China and it's not the Chinese people. In fact, it is an evil political regime that controls China and controls the Chinese people. And so when we talk about what an evil political regime does, we must always say that's the Chinese Communist Party.
Yeah, not China, chat. Not Chinese, it's the CCP. Cult.
For the first time in decades, we've seen a significant decline in American quality of life. American youth may be far worse off than their parents.
Now, just pause for a moment
It's
and
sad,
think about
bro.
all of the examples in history
It's so sad.
of tyrants, of empires who were not well-intentioned when it came to human flourishing. The CCP is at the top of that terrible list. And what remains beautiful about the United States of America, in spite of our warts, in spite of our political challenges, is that we do represent, if you talk to anyone in the world, the last best hope, not just for Americans, but for freedom. And so for the United States to fail to confront the full scope and reality of the CCP and how they see this final war is not just to cause Americans to suffer, it's to cause people worldwide to suffer. Because if the United States can't prevail against the CCP, then no one can.
Fox. Rest in peace, man. Rest in peace. All the
In the
warriors.
heart of every soldier, there's a dream of peace. Just as we study war, not for war, but for peace. For a free and beautiful America. A free and tranquil world.
Jeez, man.
We grew up watching some of the most iconic war films of our time. And in most cases, there's a bright ending. Justice is served, the good is rewarded, and the bad is punished. I firmly believe the same will happen to this final war we find ourselves in. What's most urgent now is for the free world to unite and act before it's too late. Now that we've seen the Chinese Communist regime that is punished,
Sorry, chap.
I firmly believe the same will happen to this final war we find ourselves in. What's
Need the
most
clips.
urgent now is for the free world to unite and act before it's too late. Now that we've seen the Chinese Communist regime for what it is, its lies and destructive power,
jeez,
the CCP is also not as strong as it seems. It is rather vulnerable. And with the party so set on internal power struggles, Beijing is slipping into a deeper crisis. But we face the greatest difficulty.
I think the thorniest policy problem as we confront the CCP is disentangling China and the United States.
If we look at the progress we've made so far, it is reassuring. Some of the Trump-era policies to contain the CCP continue under the Biden administration. In Washington, a series of bills targeting China's human rights issues and protecting U.S. intellectual property have been passed. But these measures are far from enough. It's time to see the Chinese Communist regime as a real adversary.
One, protect the American people, protect our institutions, protect our way of life. How do we do that? Well, we do that by getting the Chinese Communist Party out of our academic institutions, out of our political institutions, out of our corporate institutions, out of our financial institutions. We take them out of our system altogether. Now, we did this during the Cold War with the Soviet Union because we knew that they would use this connectedness to undermine our society and to grow their own power, which is exactly what the Chinese Communist Party is meant to do. So protect.
America only cares about the Soviet Union. That's a big red flag, man. Big red flag.
Part two was rebuild. As we protect by decoupling from the Chinese Communist Party, we use that innovation, technology, talent.
We all been brainwashed.
That's no longer flowing to China to rebuild our own economy, our own infrastructure, our own manufacturing, and our own science and technology, and we protect our critical infrastructure and data. And then finally, if we do that, if we protect and we rebuild, the American people will prosper. Jobs will come back. We begin to inspire again. And that's really the heart of America's foreign policy, is to be so good at providing for the American people, to provide them the kind of life that any human wants to live, to lift up the human spirit. When you do that, other nations begin to realize that, freedom, liberty, rule of law,
God,
free trade, civil liberties, human rights, these are what define a society, a successful society, a thriving society, not one-party rule, not authoritarianism or totalitarianism, not brutalization of your population, not forced organ harvesting or genocide, but liberty,
forced freedom. You know what?
The things that we used to enjoy. These are the things that will inspire other nations to want to be like this.
The way the individual American can partake in this in ways that defeat the CCP is to stop buying anything from China, made in China. But the second thing is, and this is crucial, we have to put political pressure on our elected officials that at the top of their political program is to disentangle America's economy, America's politics from the CCP. That's the first step in doing this. The good news is, if we can do that, the CCP's total war strategy hinges upon being able to use our own systems, our own politics against us. If they don't have that, then they're going to lose the war. It's incumbent upon the United States, therefore, every American to recognize the threat in front of us and how much it affects our individual lives.
Max.
They can boycott Chinese products, communist Chinese products to the maximum degree, which will help. Every dollar you send to China is going to buy a bullet to fire at your troops.
Never buy any Chinese technology. Realize every piece of Chinese technology, whether it's an appliance, whether it's software, hardware, network, apps, realize that those are all weaponized technologies and weaponized to collect information and to use that information against you, whether it's this year, next year, or in the next 5 years.
Wow. TikTok. Good one.
No matter where we are in the political spectrum, it's time for all Americans to wake up to our common goal. The good times are ahead if we work side by side to confront and defeat this greatest adversary. It doesn't take a military force to see tyranny fall. Yet what should we bring to China and the Chinese people after this confrontation?
It's really important in American policy that we focus on the Chinese Communist Party, which is a minuscule fraction of the Chinese people, and to give them hope that up to this point in history, every tyrannical government has eventually been defeated.
We're on the side of the Chinese people. We're both enemies of the Chinese Communist Party.
Whether they be Americans or Chinese people, that the United States of America stands with every person on this planet because our Creator designed us to be free.
Facts. Thank you, Lord.
Get to the truth. Publish everywhere.
Your Creator, my Creator.
Get the truth out to all the Chinese people about the genocide, the Uyghurs, the Falun Gong, the Tibetans, the forced human organ transplants, all those type of things. Just get the truth out, blanket the world with the truth on the Chinese Communist Party.
At the Epoch Times, we've been getting the truth out through thick and thin for 20 years. With all our efforts in shattering the lies of the Chinese communist regime, this documentary is worth sharing to every corner of the world. The truth needs to be told.
Share this video with your friends, chat.
Today, the Chinese regime and the world are at a crossroads of destiny.
Otherwise, we have to pay for this.
The 1.4 billion people in mainland China are struggling to survive this brutal tyranny. They also need to find the courage to cut themselves off from the authoritarian regime.
There is a real power in confronting reality. When we confront reality, that's when the divine help comes in.
It only took one night for the powerful Soviet regime to collapse. We believe when the whole world sees the true color of the CCP, its demise can happen just as fast.
The people of China would have toppled that oppressive regime, and we would have had a free China.
We're gonna have a free China.
A China where religion can prosper.
CCP will fall.
Where people
God will
free,
reign in China.
Where all that culture and history would have been used to benefit mankind.
The rise of communist China largely stems from the decline in human morality. When the pursuit of profit blinded the eyes of wisdom. In the face of evil, we need to regain moral courage, restore traditional values, and strengthen our faith. Our life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness depend on it. The founding of the eyes of wisdom.
Clip this. Like the video, chat.
The rise of communist China largely stems from the decline in human morality. When the pursuit of profit blinded the eyes of wisdom. In the face of evil, we need to regain moral courage, restore traditional values, and strengthen our faith. Our life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness depend on it. The founding of this country depends on it. A country made for a moral people. Our founding fathers firmly believed that God's will is
Facts.
manifest in the actions of the American people. And that spirit has made our nation strong and prosperous for more than 200 years.
Facts.
This final war will be our choice for justice, the salvation of human civilization, and the dawn of a new day.
W. Chat. If you made it this long to the live, you do me 2 things. Like, put a comment, and share the live. Or 3 things. 3 things. Alright, 3 things. Alright. Do 3 things. Like the live, share the live, and put a comment down. Put down a comment down in the comments below. Let me know. Let me know your thoughts about this. Let's get an action plan together. You know? I have all my links in the description. You guys can hit those links. Join the Discord. Hit me up in the Discord. DM me on Instagram. Let me know the plan. Let me know what we're gonna do. I want to make a plan moving forward. I want to move forward from this. Thank you for hanging out with me to the end. Thank you guys for your support. I couldn't do this without you. God bless you. Stay up and. I didn't mean to do that, not gonna lie. Stay up, stay blessed. God bless you guys, alright? Good night.